Welcome back, everyone. Every time I hear that opening, it just makes my heart sing, knowing that we are back here again to bring to you the home study course written by Walter and Leo Russell. And so hard to believe we're here at the November 10th, and we are at Unit 6, Lesson 22. And we have our esteemed panel here with us. But before we begin, and I ask each one of them for their favorite thought around Lesson 22, why don't we go ahead and just take a moment, recalibrate, tune into the ocean sounds as we do at the beginning of each session, and just recalibrate for a moment. If you'll breathe in and out deeply, tuning into the rhythm. Relax your head, relax your fingers. Drop down into your heart and ground yourself into sound. Remember, there is no accident that your path and our path crosses. Perhaps you want to tune into that beautiful sunset that John captured for us all and just marvel at the waves hitting the beach and bring yourself to gratitude for this moment in time. Maybe even place your hand over your heart and remember that there's a reason why your path and our paths have crossed at this moment. Thank you so much, James. John, that is such a gorgeous sunset that you gifted us with. So here we have our esteemed panel here tonight. So we'll start with John. I just wanted to ask you all before we begin, what is kind of one of your favorite nuggets here from Lesson 22? John?
I can't really say that I have a favorite nugget per se, but what stands out to me in this particular lesson was how the technique that the Russells use to get you there. It's very methodical, and they repeat when necessary, highlight when necessary, and try to keep it as elementary as possible. So that's what stands out to me, not only in this unit, but pretty much the entire course, of how they lay that foundation nice and methodical for us.
I love that. Jim?
For me, it's important that we hit on this with a little detail tonight. I'll read you the thing from my book. The mechanics of this thinking power are as a lever which extends two ways from the fulcrum. Now it goes on to say the father dash mother, that's the stillness of the fulcrum as one, is the still fulcrum in which all power lies. Father dash mother. When you're talking in the next sentence, they're talking about embodied male, female. The father and mother bodies are, which are extended from the fulcrum, are the moving bodies. So listen to their language, because it can be so subtle sometimes. When you see that dash, she's telling you that the two are one, or they're telling you that the two are one. When you see the end, they're talking about the embodied.
Okay. All right. Love that. It is all the nuances. And Karen, a quickly thought from you. What's your favorite part?
Having done the video for tonight, it was very funny. I said, do you not mean that minerals have sex? Do you? And the answer was yes. All the elements of matter are either separate, male and female, or united as one. So it's not so that was pretty funny when I was doing that. I was like, okay, minerals have sex too.
Well, and so I want to add to that. So in this particular unit, in this particular revised third edition, I just wanted to show you the color pictures because this is a really big deal. John, if you would just comment that this is the first version of the home study course, and here the colored pictures showed up in Unit 6, and just wanted you to comment that you, as the former president of the USB, you played a role in having these pictures colorized for the home study course.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I was one day going down in the archives, and I was reading some stuff that Leo had written, and where she had expressed that someday that she hoped that she could get the home study course colorized. And I thought, you know what, it's time to make that happen. So we put an effort together, and it took a good solid year to do that and to bring this forth. And perhaps maybe down the road we can maybe enhance it even a little, maybe a little more. But yeah, this was a gift to Leah.
Is. Well, I love that, John. And part of what really stood out to me this time is this is my first time going through this version of it and all the colors. And I was like, wow, what a difference it made, because my previous version was all black and white, and color really does bring things to life. So I was extra grateful for you and the team that pulled together this gift that you all gave to humanity. And I remember you being so sweet and committed to making sure that you were honoring Leo's wishes. And when you found what she said, I hope someday it can be colored, that really seemed to give you permission to say, yes, it's time. So before we dive into our very big lesson tonight, and it is a big lesson, and it is an incredibly powerful lesson, we have a treat for you all. We actually invited one of our students that have been in our session on Sunday nights. Hello, Bonnie. Hello, Linda. We actually invited the author, Dee Tonkin, to come on and just say a few words with us tonight. Dee, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, Kim. It's wonderful to be here. And I've been with you all right from the beginning. And your work you're doing is just marvelous. And I just really applaud your efforts there. I started the book series. I have actually 2 going now, but it's 2 series with one vision. And it was started with, I'm going to give you a little show and tell here because it's easier, with the first book I did for my granddaughter, which is Aurora Borealis and the power behind love, nature, and harmony. And it was a birthday present. And so I just really wanted to give her something special. And so here are some of the images of the first book. And there's Aurora and Nana D. And from that, I created a couple of more, but more specifically, we have Willie Lost But Not Really that follows that. This is Aurora going through all these different books, and they all take place in Mystic Harbor, Maine, because that's where I'm from. But these 3 in particular are the ones that are directly related to the Russell science. And what I love I'm only a 3rd-year student, much like you, Kim. I've been in the material for 3 years. I started with the home study course. This is my 3rd go around with the home study course. And I'm so looking forward to the science, because science does not easily resonate with me. And I've studied philosophical and spiritual material for over 50 years and am fascinated by it. But it wasn't until I got to the Russell material, quite by accident, reading other material, Leo Russell came forward, that it's really the science, the natural science has grounded everything that I've learned up to this point in time after 50 years of studying this. So in the Lantern of Light, just to give you a really brief overview, Tim Gillespie helped me with the science. God bless that man. He started with the Universal One and paragraph by paragraph walked me through it. And I dedicated this one to him and dear brother. And it's about Aurora finding a mystical lantern that shows her the seen and the unseen worlds. And there's quotes in here from, of course, the Russell material. And I'm sure I get this correct.
We see it.
Okay. So the second one, which we were just talking about earlier too, this is Aurora asking Nana D about, well, who am I and why am I here and what am I about? And so we're back to the universal questions of a little girl who goes and on a journey of her own, because she realizes that she needs to do it on her own, and discovering who she is and her connection with nature. These are children's stories book, but they're deceptively simple, and they have very, very deep messages. And for all of us, I actually have an adult book study group that's going through all of these books. Once little Laura in the 3rd book learns about the seesaw and the fulcrum and the whirlpools, she takes it to a school fair and teaches her fellow students about it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
Cool.
So the whole purpose of the books in general, I mean, it started with Aurora and my love for my granddaughter and my love for the teachings. is how to bring these magnificent concepts for a woman my age, after 50 years of studying all these other materials. How do we bring the science down to young people, young families, and even for people like myself who aren't necessarily scientifically oriented?
Dee, you have been such an inspiration, truly. I'm working on trying to get an article published about you and your efforts because I was just so impressed. And I'm going to have the rest of the panel comment in just a minute, but I want to ask James to come on because James has been working with you, and some of the books were sent to you, James, and I thought it would be neat for the audience to hear what your kids' response to the books were.
Yeah, so Dee and I had a great, I think like hour plus, maybe hour and a half conversation. And she sent me the entire Aurora Borealis series, the first 6 books, and immediately showed them to my daughters, my 8-year-old now, and my 4-year-old, and they loved it. And I had my 8-year-old read it to my 4-year-old, and had a really good conversation. They asked a lot of questions, which I thought was kind of the point of the books, is to generate conversation. And then as I told Dee, I had a little bit more trouble getting my son, my 9-year-old, to read it because, well, he reads different types of books generally. And so after sitting down and trying for about 10 minutes to get him to read it, he did. And halfway through, he started asking me questions, and we had like a 30-minute conversation afterwards. So I didn't expect it to really generate conversation so much as just to be an entertaining book for them to read and just introduce them to it. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that they were very curious after reading them.
Nice.
Wow. Well, thank you, James. As the father of 4, I thought that would be interesting for people to hear you weigh in. So Dee is going to be joining us in just a moment on the actual session. But for any of the panel, any thoughts you want to share with Dee as just listening to her, because I have found this incredibly inspiring myself.
I'm just thinking it's amazing that you have taken a different flavor, but the same thing, and done it for the youth. And that I love it that James is saying that people are asking questions, and it's sparking and igniting conversation. I mean, that's where it begins. So thank you, Dee.
Yes. Okay.
I find it wonderful too, Dee. It's something that's been lacking for so long, communication of the message to the young. And as we all know, when their brains are so active, absorbing so much at these ages, to get this knowledge into them is amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Kimberly and Dee, you just wanted to comment on how Tim Gillespie, he kind of worked behind the scenes, and he was instrumental in helping us colorize the Universal One. Didn't really want to take any credit for whatever, but Michaela, would identify and find these pics, and we would share them with Tim, and then he would modify them and perfect them so that they were ready to be. And so it was wonderful, Dee, to hear you say that he had worked with you and on some of the science. That was wonderful to hear.
Well, I'm very blessed. Tim very much blessed me in walking me through the science, and he encouraged me to attend the cosmogony group, which is the 3rd Tuesday of every month that the university holds. And I would never have, because I thought, oh, they're going to talk science, it's going to be way over my head. I mean, the philosophy was easy for me. The science was not. And he encouraged, and I'm so grateful that he did. Because when you stay with the material long enough, what doesn't hit you in the beginning, it starts to resonate more and more and more, and all the little dots start connecting. And if it wasn't for Tim, I would not have approached the science aspect of this. And I'm so excited that you're now going into the science, because even after 3 years, I can't wait to hear what you all have to say and your interpretations and perspectives on the science.
Well, thank you, Dee. Before we have Dee go on to join us behind the scenes, I do want to recognize that Tim Gillespie was a major volunteer with the University of Science and Philosophy. He just refolded, is what they call it in this world, because there is no death. He refolded earlier this year, and he was a huge volunteer and dedicated so much time and love to the university and just the overall work of Walter and Leah Russell. So our heart is certainly with him. I had the pleasure of working with him as well, and just so incredibly powerful. But a gracious thank you, Dee. We wanted everyone just to hear. What amazes me about your story is that you did this in your 70s. You took this on. You had not published books. You dove right into all of this because of your love, not only for your granddaughter, but also for these works, right?
Absolutely. And I want to close with one quick thing. I know you have a full agenda,
Please.
but because of tonight's subject matter, this is from the 12 Months of Harmony. and it's the your inner balance and your outer best. It's the month of do your best, but it's about two B's. And
Oh, wow.
There you
okay, okay, I gotta get there. Okay, so
Names
the
will make
boy
you
bee
bigger.
is very creative, and the female bee,
Oh, look at that.
yes, is very practical. I switched the stereotypes. And through this book, I also give the quotes of the Russells, and we speak about the masculine and the feminine balance within the story of two bees that bring order to the beehive.
I love it.
That is fantastic, Dee. So a gracious thank you, dear. And we are always so thrilled to see you on every single time. If all of you would just give her some love there in the chat box, we will go ahead and get ready to start our lesson. A big thank you, Dee.
Thank you all. And do a great
Thank
work.
you, Dee.
Wait,
It's wonderful.
Where do we find her? So we know.
She's on Amazon. We'll go ahead and we'll link that on the books. Deb Tonkin, we'll put that in the chat box as well, and we've been spotlighting that each time. So thank you. Dee did know that we have a big session tonight, so let's go ahead and begin, shall we? We are on lesson 22, unit 6 this evening. And so if we would, John, why don't we go ahead and start there with the very top of the how it starts on page this particular page 431. You'll see two things highlighted there. Let's go ahead and get into that first sentence because they gave us a lot right there.
Yes. So this particular unit starts off with this spectrum, sex-divided universe. The most important fact of nature is to know the identity of God and his purpose of creation. The second most important fact is God's manner of constructing his universe.
So let's start with those two things. Those are two distinct things, understanding the purpose of it and then the manner of constructing it. And I thought that was incredibly powerful. And John, if you'll continue where the second sentence, it says his processes of creation.
His processes of creation, the mystery of light, gravity, sex, life, death, growth, decay, energy, and matter, and the other mysteries which pertain to God's manner of constructing matter.
Wow.
Many
So
of
that's
these, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Many of these heretofore unknown secrets will be clarified in order that they seemingly
Scroll down, James.
insurmountable barrier into the cosmic unknown realms of cold space can be overcome. Beautiful.
All right. So Jim, as we go there, if you'll read that sentence that we've got the star and then go on down to the blue brackets here, because these were very, very powerful.
Postulate. God's sole purpose in creating his universe is to manifest the light of love. God's only way of manifesting his undivided, omniscient idea is to divide his sexless father-motherhood into sexed pairs of male and female bodies, which represent many ideas. Also to divide his universal light into the red half and the blue half of the visible spectrum. Also to divide the omniscience of his love into the two pressures of compression and expansion in order to manifest love by the action and reaction of giving and re-giving.
Whew, can we just pause for a moment? That's big. So bring up a few points, Jim, to people who have never heard of the Russell work. There are some big ideas in that particular paragraph that we want to be sure to land before we continue.
We've touched on this throughout the previous 6 units with the Russells. And what it comes down to is there's only one purpose for creation, the creator to be manifested. That's it. Now, there are degrees of that manifestation that evolve over centuries, millions of years. We spent millions of years just building the physical body we're in. Then we have the dawn of a consciousness. Now we're trying to understand our communion or commune with this something that we're not fully aware of yet. As we all talked about previously, now that we're heading out of the pagan barbarian age, the first step in consciousness, we're moving into the consciousness of knowingly working with Creator, and that's genius. So not only are the geniuses appearing again all over the world, they're going to happen at a much faster pace, and they're going to transmute everything into light and understanding. And that's what the Russells did. They're giving us light and understanding in words so that you can transmute that into knowing within you. And it's something I don't know how to express it other than to say that after 50 years, I never grow weary of this work. I never cease to be amazed as I read through it again and discover even a deeper understanding of my oneness and yours with Creator.
I agree. All right, John, what is important to take out of that paragraph before we continue? So anybody who's listening for the first time, and if you're on TikTok with us and you haven't heard some of these things, hang tight. Just breathe in what it is that we're discussing here today, because your soul actually knows this. What are one or two things you want to bring out in that paragraph, John?
Well, I want to just concentrate on the very first sentence.
Okay.
The most important fact of nature is to know the identity of God. Now, that's a heavy statement, and we just, glossed right on over it. So the identity of God. So what is the identity of God? Well, everything that is visible in this three-plane universe, this three-dimensional universe, is the identity of God. It is the result of God's thinking, ideas made manifest. So if you can just, when I was a child, you used to hear people say, God is everywhere and God is everything and God knows everything. And hell, you don't know how to digest that as a kid. But going through this course and as this material is delivered, there's no more separateness. You're kind of like drawn in. And then when you can say to yourself that I and the Father are one, man, what a hurdle. And then life becomes more beautiful after that, like you cannot imagine. So I just didn't want us to just bypass that statement because it's so powerful.
There were so many powerful things in this particular chapter. So I'm going to keep us going, and I'll come back to Karen as well, because I want to go ahead to the bottom of page 432. And the subtitle of this section is called Knowing and Thinking. So if you have your own copy, make a note of this, knowing or thinking. And I want to go where this is highlighted yellow. The wave universe of divided two-way motion exists solely to manifest the sex urge of nature. There's no other motivating force in the universe than the energy of mind. There is no other process of expressing mind power than the divided lightweight process of thinking. All right, so let's pause for a moment. I think before I came to this work, I never really thought of the sex urge of nature, I'm going to say, okay? So to someone who's never heard of this, please make that simple for understanding as we go into more detail here. What is the sex urge of nature? John?
It's the opposite of celibacy.
Okay. Jim?
All right. Now, on a serious note. All right. The undivided, sexless. That's what, so those terms synonymous, right? The undivided, sexless, motionless. That's our Creator. Mind. That's all there is. So to express your knowing, that's what the thinking process is all about, is to express your knowing. All right. So what good is it to just keep it in your head and you don't do anything, you don't express it? I mean, for example, like what Karen does for us every week, of her taking this information and using her genius and her creative abilities to try to make it easier and to make it visible so people can understand what's in front of them. And so that's part of that process.
Okay. So let me go ahead then. I want to continue to the bottom of page 432. And I was sorry that Ken Pearson, our other panelist, could not be with us. He's recovering from hip replacement because he loves this particular subject and can explain it so well. It says, there is not else much in the universe other than male and female bodies of living light, which we call matter. The mechanics of this thinking power are as a lever which extends two ways from its fulcrum. The father-mother is the still fulcrum in which all power lies. So I drew the seesaw on this. So keep it there at the bottom of page 432, please. I drew the seesaw because that section that looks like a triangle, that is the fulcrum. So what's important to know about that, Jim?
Well, for one thing, there is no motion in it. It's still, it's eternal. It's the only true existing thing in creation. Creation is a thinking process embodies of the idea of its oneness. Creation will always lead you, the seesaw, no matter how many times you go back and forth and how many paths you choose up and down the proverbial mountain, will always lead you back to the oneness. You can become lost, but you can never become permanently lost. You can become confused, but knowledge will follow confusion. That is your gift from Creator. You can dwell as, what's the term they use a lot nowadays? You can go down the rabbit hole as deep as you want. You can go down the rabbit hole so deep that you lose conception of who and what you are, but you will always find your way back to knowing your oneness with divine.
Okay.
That's
All right. So, Karen, I'm going to ask you to comment in just a moment. We're going to go a little bit more down page 433 to the green highlight, and it says, together the fulcrum and the lever. So the lever is the seesaw, correct, gentlemen? The lever is the seesaw. The fulcrum is that triangle that keeps it. And it says, together the fulcrum and the lever constitute the divine trinity of creation. The light wave which creates matter is that creative trinity. There is naught else in the universe than the sex-divided waves of light, which unite their divisions at wave amplitudes to become one. Karen, a quick thought on that before I ask John to comment?
Yeah, because if you look at a field like a torus field, like the field that we emanate with, we have a yin and we have a yang because it spins, and in the center is the stillness. So as we have two hemispheres of our brain, we have a creative side and a logical side. The universe is always divided and having this process, always moving and turning in its desires. But it always, as Jim says, comes back to the center because it has to come back to the center. It has to go through I'm going to call it the full circle, if that makes sense.
All right, John?
Yes, the divine trinity. So I'm going to share with our audience, and I might be jumping ahead here, I'm not sure. But the divine trinity is action, reaction, rest. And just like what Kimberly said, come back to that 0 point, to that fulcrum. So that lever that we see, the lever, the seesaw. So if the guy on the one side is pushing up, which is an action, right? Then the reaction is the other guy going down, right? Yeah. And then vice versa. But in that up and down motion, it has to pass by 0 in order to then gain the momentum to switch to the other side. So that process, whether it's cosmically or atomically, that sequence is throughout the universe, unchanged.
Okay. All right. So just a few other thoughts here on page 433. If we'll scroll down, for those of you that have your copy, we encourage you to study this page especially, but I did want to bring your attention, or stay right there, James. I did want to bring your attention to the fact that that paragraph that has the green circle there, where it talks about compressing spirals, wind up the cosmic clock, expanding spirals, unwind it. So this is going to make more sense to you in just a moment, but I want to pause because when I walked my first entrance into that museum, one of the illustrations that actually stopped me in my tracks, there was a phrase that said, the opening and closing of spirals constitutes the heartbeat of the universe. And I remember reading that and all the chills coming through my body, because at a soul level, I knew the truth of that statement. And so I bring that to our attention because we're getting ready to go into, well, you'll see some diagrams of the spirals. And John, what is it talking about there with the blue circle? If you could read that area of what you think is important as you comprehend the simplicity.
As you comprehend this simplicity, which nature is, you'll have leaped ahead 1,000 years, for all the secrets of creation lie hidden in the wave. Now, isn't that interesting? I love that statement because in the bottom of Dr. Russell's wave painting, that's what he titled it. In the wave lies the secret to creation. And so Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let's capture that, James. In the wave lies the secret of creation. I was even speaking with someone today, and they were talking about, in the Bible it says at the beginning there was the Word, and I explained to them how the Word was a wave. That when you really understand that everything is a wave, all of a sudden everything begins to make much more sense. And to me, that's when life became more magical for me. Very, very powerful. And this is where it talks to that we're coming into the cosmic age. And so the last highlighted section on page 43, the whole play of creation is a dramatization of the love principle of giving for re-giving. So can explain the love principle, Jim, please? Because that's a phrase that people are often not familiar with. What is the love principle?
It's balance. The love principle is when the wave actions interact with each other, that they balance each other out at source, at zero, at fulcrum. And therefore, it's as if nothing ever happened.
Can I give a thought on that one, Kimberly?
Sure.
It was interesting because I was actually looking at the little book that I have here, which had to do with that Walter they have on this one, which is the secret, whatever. And if you can equate it to a battery, and you look at yourself, because there's a battery is a positive and a negative, just like the poles of the earth. And if you're in a relationship and one's taking and one's not giving, there's all the ways that a battery can be short circuited, and that's one way to think about it. Is what is it that we do when we stop a communication? What is it when we do when we turn our back? What is it that when we do when that does not feel loving? And that's exactly what Jim is talking about. What happens in that circuit when we stop the energy flow?
Okay, but I know John's going to certainly say what Leo said about this issue of positive and negative. So go ahead, John. I know I could feel you about ready to jump in.
I wasn't going to go with that quote, but what I did want to share was the term love. Okay, the way it's mostly used in the world, it's like a one-way thing, to love something, and that's wonderful. Okay, but true love is that giving and re-giving. It was like Karen was just saying, in a relationship, if you've got a taker in the relationship and that's all the hell they do is take and give nothing back, it creates tension. And in time and over time, that tension will build up, and you're going to have arguments and disagreements, separation, divorce, that kind of thing. So, but love is a two-edged sword. One side is the giving, the other side is the re-giving. And it's both in one, not just the one action of giving or embracing something.
So let's pause for a moment, because the way the world says these kind of things is they say give and receive, give and receive. What the Russells have done with this giving and re-giving, this keeps the energy continuing and going. Because if I give something to John and he simply receives it, then the path of energy stops.
Yeah.
But if I give something to John, in fact, John, I'll share with them the funny little story that you and I have. So John and I, we have a principle that we started recently where he'll give me something and then I'll end up giving him something. And then, so we're starting our little own cycle here, right? And we were joking at first about putting it in a little box, saying I'll bring back an empty box and we keep this giving and re-giving. So it's a little joke that he and I have. But what's important for us all to understand is this is a little bit different. And if we in the world that it's not just giving and receiving, it's giving and re-giving. Because when it's given to me, I then turn around and I give it to somebody else. And when I'm giving it to somebody else is giving it to me. And this is how the energy goes. Is that a fair way to say it, Jim?
Yes. And Karen's example is a lovely one. Let's look at a balanced relationship. Two fully charged batteries come together and unite as one. It makes them multiplied in their power and their potential, and there's no loss. Two unequally charged batteries can come together also as one, but the less charged battery, or the negative one, is going to draw off of the positive one, pulling it down as the positive one lifts the negative one up. And if they can hold that new balance, they can together recharge themselves to full charge. But because the negative one has not the understanding that the positive one had to become fully charged, they can sometimes not be able to make that leap and end up resenting the more awakened charged one for being superior, or the words they were used,
More charged,
putting
that's good.
yourself above me. And that resentment can lead to them looking outside of the relationship when they can't get that feed that they want from the more positively charged battery, to get it from somewhere else. And that's what causes the breakups in our world. And it's a beautiful example, Karen. A battery is a very try it sometime. Take a decharged battery and put it in a flashlight with a charged battery. It will heat up until it reaches that equilibrium, and it will not last as long.
Jim, John, you have a comment before I have a show
Yes,
1 minute before break.
I think it's good that if we can try to give our audience a practical example of what we're talking about. You know, the disaster that took place in Western North Carolina, the devastation, and to see those people in need, and then to see those that were not affected by that, and they were given, and they had abundance of certain things, time and energy and resources. And so it was wonderful to see. Now that's love in action right there. Now we can get technical and break it down into male and female and fulcrum and lever and all of that, but that is a true living example of the love principle in action right there.
Okay, so very, very powerful stuff. And so for all of you that are joining us on YouTube, on TikTok, all of our other social medias, we're so happy to have you here. What we do around the 30-minute mark because we're on for 90 minutes is we take a quick 3-minute break. We're a big believer of making sure that you can go stand up, get some oxygen, maybe get a drink of water, let your brain absorb what it is that we're talking about. We have so much more to go over. This is an incredible lesson. So if you would, go ahead and take your 3-minute break. We'll see you shortly. All right, and then we'll find the back. Our 3 minutes. This comes to an end. So, as we are having everyone come back, and the music comes to an end, I did want to jump back here before we continue, because on page 433, there was when we were talking about the cosmic clock winding up and expanding, winding up and unwinding. I do want to bring our attention go back up a little bit, James. So it says figure 13 right there in the middle where the blue highlight is. Keep going up. I want to just bring back to everybody that paragraph of the cosmic clock. So it says figure 13 illustrates the entire process of construction and deconstruction of matter. So now scroll down to the next page. So forgive me because I highlighted it because it tells more about this later, but I do want you to just take a look if we can make this smaller so they can see the whole page all at once. So get used to what this looks like. You've seen this in some of our previous lessons. I'll come back to the color a little bit later because as I went through the lesson, I was coloring based on some things later, but just wanted to bring this to your attention and keep us going because there's a lot more that comes back to that particular diagram. So John, on the next page, on page 435, it says there in the highlighted yellow, it says the greatest lesson in life. Can you continue with that and go on down to the next two paragraphs?
I will. The greatest lesson in life is to learn how to balance your interchangings in every transaction of life. Unbalanced interchanges cause what you call bad effects. The thing to realize and remember about bad effects, which result from your unbalanced interchanging, is that you cause them yourself. Likewise, good effects follow balanced transaction, which you also made. We know it is difficult to readjust your thinking to the fact that all nature is composed of male and female bodies which desire to lose their separateness in each other's oneness. That is all there is in creation. However,
my goodness. Okay, so let's anchor that here. And if you'll scroll down just a little bit, James, because what's fascinating about this, on the highlighted, it talks about there, it says that to create body forms of idea, the balance of the universal equilibrium must be divided into pairs of oppositely unbalanced male-female sex mates which perpetually seek balance in each other. Now, for everyone who is new to this kind of lingo, please hang tight because by the time we get to the end of lesson 22 here, these images, I think, drive home the point of this. So just let it settle here as we go. Yes.
it's important for you to finish that statement.
Please.
It says, for the purpose of recreating other pairs of oppositely divided sex mates. That is procreation. Only one half of the divided spectrum cannot procreate. It takes two to procreate, and that's what keeps the universe ongoing.
And when you mention procreate, just for people who are new to this, let's say some of our TikTok viewers here, you're talking about not just procreate and having humans, you're talking about procreating in universes, procreating everything in nature.
Everything, because just one side of the light spectrum cannot create anything. It takes two to create anything.
Okay, so let's keep going. This will make more sense as we go along. Jim, I'm coming to you here for the next page, 440. So it says this as we scroll down here. It says, for behold, I am within all things centering them, and I am without all things controlling them. So there at the page top of 440, James, you skipped ahead a little bit. 440, scroll down. Why? Right there. Okay. So for behold, I am within all things centering them, and I am without all things controlling them. That's from the Divine Iliad. Jim, can you comment on that?
The divine that centers all things it's a statement that you are divine. That's what it is. All things. Everything is centered with divinity. The controlling outside is the inwinding interaction between the sex opposite bodies. God is in control of that. The Russells pointed out karmically, if you want to look at it that way, is you have free will to do as you will while in body, but you do not have free will to control the reaction to your action. That is kept on the outside. As we get further into science, you'll see within the cube, there's the centering light of divinity at center of the cube, and there's the 8 zeros on the outside, which is the control. That's the control centers. So from creator to creation. Now you can break universal law, and the Russells also clearly point this out a lot. It's definitely in the Divine Iliad. But universal law will break you in exact accordance to how you broke it, not to punish you, so that you may fulfill your purpose, which is to manifest divinity.
Yes. Okay, John,
I'm going to simplify this for our audience.
please.
What that statement is saying that it's gravity. Gravity. So within the center of the atom is stillness. Okay? And then on the outer edges of that atom into its own solar system is gravity. It's a gravitational push and pull. And that is all there is in the universe, is that two sequence. So
Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit, because they mentioned, if you go down to the green highlighted sentence there, because it actually says that this, so it talks about the thinking. Okay, so let's go to that whole paragraph. Now, if you will think of these 3 zeros of rest in the words of the Divine Iliad just quoted, the one we're talking about now, you will better understand that there is not one thing in nature, not even one microscopic cell in your body, nor the slightest action of your body or your thinking, nor of a grain of dust on a butterfly wing, that is not thus balanced from within. By God's light of universal consciousness, notice how all those things are capitalized. By God's light of universal consciousness, and from without, by God's omnipotent desire force of gravity. So John, just tie into that, because that's where the gravity was tied in there.
yes, so there's no exceptions to the rule. Everything in the universe is subject to that one principle right there.
Okay.
Stars, galaxies, atoms.
Now, what's interesting, John, if you look down where I have the yellow highlighted arrow a little bit farther, it says, the greater your ability to see it as we tell it to you, the wider the doors to the light will open unto you. So to me, I want to pause for a moment there, because that's part of why, so Jim, why is it important for somebody, just briefly, why is it important for someone to actually spend time on the science? For me, the more I study this, the more I understand the universe around me, and it makes me feel less separate. It helps me see the unified nature of all things. Jim?
I would say that the philosophy is the why, and the science is the how. Why are you here?
Okay.
So that you manifest through science, build the perfect body within creation. It doesn't matter how long that takes. It will be accomplished. This is the struggle in life. We get upset and angry because things don't go well. I think I've used the example before. I took great joy in watching my children learn to walk. They would first, of course, pull themselves forward on their bellies. Then they would get into a crawling position, and they'd learn to lean forward and start to crawl. And as they were going through these motions, they would fall. But rarely did they give up. They simply got up again and tried it again and again. And that's what we're doing in multiple lifetimes. Trying, knowingly or unknowingly, to manifest what we are, which is divinity.
Karen?
I think this goes back to the meditation and everything else. When we get to literally the center, which people talk about, center yourself, be still and know. And that's part of what we're discussing. When we get to be centered, let the inspiration come into you, the divine that wants to talk to you, that gives you that thrust forward. I think we've all been experiencing. I know Kimberly and I have been talking a lot. It's like we've been opening up as we've even been doing this, and more stuff is flooding in. It's not like it's like it's just like it's flooding in. So allow for that messenger to come through.
Yes, very, very powerful. And that's why this is I was so excited about us doing this. So as we scroll to the bottom of page 440 and the top of page 441, it says this. And interesting, so listen to how they worded this. Your senses, James, go up a little bit, because I'm going to read the last of page 440. So your senses have built this tremendous complexity which does not exist in your knowing. The infinite complexity of the cosmos is composed of infinite reflected and repeated extensions of one centering zero to two extended ones, just as the infinite complexity of the kaleidoscope is similarly composed. So, John, comment on that. I mean, they're saying we've made it complex, but it really is simple.
Well, yeah. If people will just allow themselves to know that there's a starting point and an ending point, right? So if we take those three planes, those three pieces of glass in the kaleidoscope, and you can see initially, the pattern. And so as your thinking changes, right, as your thoughts change, that's you turning the other end of the kaleidoscope, and you'll see a different pattern, a different result, and so on. And it's that, but what the Russells are saying is that you can take that complexity into the infinite, and that's what our senses are designed to, is to sense motion, right? But motion is not reality. It's only the simulation of the idea. And that's what they're trying to get to here, is that, yeah, it's complex out there, but the simple 9 building blocks and then the divine trinity, action, reaction, rest, if you'll just hold on to that, you'll go, wow, not that difficult.
Okay. Karen?
And if you think of everything having a field, like we talked about before, the energetic field that surrounds the earth, that surrounds you, that is the kaleidoscopic journey that every dimension is actually on. And each one of those fractures in that wheel, as it turns, if you look at a sine and a cosine waves, if it spins, each one of those angles creates a different geometry, a different color, it's a different perspective. And each one of those is a mood and a shape and a geometry that reflects onto this ocean that we live in. But no one of it's the same. And that's the beauty of the journey that we have. Nobody has to live the same thing. Everybody's living their reality in any given moment in time.
All right. So I love, yes.
I want to give an example. Jim, the other night, sent out a beautiful sunset. And I was like, and then the next day I told him, I said, Jim, I said, only God could create something of that magnitude. And then I wanted to pause and say, well, wait a minute. If God can do it, I can do it, because God and I are one. So between the two of us, we're going to figure out how to create a sunset and a sunrise. All right.
I love it. I love it.
Hey, you know what, John? That's your aura.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So, all right. So much that we can keep talking about here. I do want to bring up the comment from 7P. 7P says, I problem solving by thinking briefly about it, then stop thinking. An idea usually shows up. So that's an excellent example of exactly what we're talking about, right, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, very, very practical. So let's go on down into the middle of 441 where I have the green highlights. It says, in this sex-divided light wave universe of seemingly countless complex pairs of opposites, effects, form, and conditions and directions of motion, there are but two mental effects from which their infinite complexities extend. These two effects are concentrative thinking and decentrative thinking. And these two constitute the whole idea of life and death, which means God's giving to nature and nature's re-giving to God. All right. So, John, what is concentrative thinking?
Concentrative thinking is holding a thought long enough, compressing that thought, if you will, winding it up to where it can manifest itself, to bring it into being. And then once you have brought that idea into being, think out of it as you borrowing that idea from Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've created something, then you relax, right? You relax, you sit back, you rest, and there it is. But eventually, in time, so the decentrative thinking is that idea being re-given back to the Creator. So don't get hung up on the time sequence or the length that takes place, because it can take place in a trillionth of a second, or it can take place once in in a million years, but that's the process. So whatever you borrow from creation or the creator must be re-given.
Okay.
John,
So
if
I'm
I
gonna,
could thought on that one, is that okay, Kimberly? It
please
just
go right ahead.
one is like you get quiet, you get the idea, but it as you it still has to be spoken in and it has to be given. So one is the receiving and one is the giving too, is it not?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's keep going because this is going to make much more sense as we continue. So for everybody, just breathe through it because I know when I first went through this in 442, it says this. It says the top of page 442, decentration reverses the life process to that which we call death. So in effect, really, death is a decentration. It's a going back to zero. Is that the proper way to say it, Jim?
Yes, it is re-giving body to creator.
Ah, that's nice.
Okay, so let's go here. It says there's many different words to use to express the same thing, which might confuse you. However, you need not be confused if you will but remember that the solution of every complex effect, whether it's chemical, electrical, astronomical, social, or that of a business problem which you're facing, it lies somewhere within the balance or unbalance between concentrative or decentrative thinking, which motivates the heartbeat of the universe. You've heard us talking about that, the heartbeat of the universe, into that which is known as the life principle. All right, so I made a little spiral there by concentration. Concentration is an effect of gathering a very large volume of rarefied matter, like gases or light rays, which you cannot see, into a small volume which compresses it into solid matter or focal point of light, which you can see. So, John, is the spiral there drawn correctly?
It is, but it's the wrong color.
I just failed my Russell bingo. It should have been red.
Right. You just got to put those little tiny points in and follow the compression side.
Okay.
And so concentration, compression, centripetal, red is male. So Russell said, if you'll hold on to something long enough, it'll come to you. So
Yep.
if you can relate those sequences to the male side of the equation, which is concentration, and that's another term for male.
Okay, so let's scroll down. Okay, I'll remember that for next time. I'm getting there. I'm learning along with everybody there. So let's scroll down to where I have that right there. Yes. So from the concentration and decentration, we now have other pairs of opposite effects, which mean exactly the same thing. And I love the way they listed this out. These are life and death. So life and death are two opposite pairs of the same thing. Is that the proper way to say it?
Yes.
Okay. Growth and decay, compression and expansion, matter and space, heat and cold, solidity and vacuity, and light and dark.
And and those opposites, people can use their own minds and their own imagination to think of those opposites in nature that exist, which also would exemplify this principle.
And it says all of these pairs of opposites mean the same thing: concentration and decentration, and each is an expression of the divided father-motherhood into living and dying pairs. All right, so we know this gets deep, so hang tight because this is going to be really powerful when we get to the end. I had this huge aha as we got towards the end, but before we go to our next break, I wanted to go on down to the next section where I have the big star. And it says this: concentration builds bodies by compression. So let me just use this. Let me just see if I have this right. Concentration. So if we were to show this and we have it says concentration and it's building bodies to the compression. Is that the proper way to say it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it says, and decentration dissipates them by expansion. So
if you'll take your model, Kimberly.
Right, let me take a better color of the model. Hold on. Let me take this right here. This might be better to see on camera. All right. And I don't have proper colors, Bonzo, so don't give me a hard time. Okay.
All right. So now there's compression and expansion, push, pull. Now, if you'll take just one of them, just take now turn it, the point downward. All right. So at the top, you see how it's much bigger at the top, right? We're taking that surface area, and then we're going to wind it up to a point, which is where your thumb is. And that process of taking that larger volume and compressing it to a smaller volume is what creates heat. That's motion. That's compression. Compression is taking a larger volume and making it into a smaller volume. Okay. And then there you go. So that one, if you point to point, no, right? Right. So just go ahead and put them push them together, up and down. Yeah. All right. So there you have it. That's it. Beyond that, there is nothing in creation than that sequence right there. The male becoming the female and the female becoming the male. Now, will that one piece go all the way through if you drop it?
Sure will.
Yeah, and then it starts over again, you see? And that sequence is forever. Very good, Kimberly. I love those things. I've been playing with them all week.
So, just so you all know, our team gets together, and the thing that was given to me when I first walked into the Russell Museum and I was assisting that is that creation is child's play. Creation is child's play. And what's so interesting is when you understand much of this teaching and you go back to things that we've seen as children, all of a sudden there's like an aha, a light switch that goes on. So when I found these, okay, so let me go to the other ones. When I found these, I'm going to be working to get the proper colors. That might show better. But I'm getting, these are not proper colors yet. But what you're talking about is this process and that's how creation happens. It goes through, it comes apart, and then it starts over again, comes through, breaks apart. That's what you're saying, right, John?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Karen, I haven't sent you yours yet, okay? But I've got some more coming, okay? So
just have the audience be patient.
Yeah, I don't.
Listen, she's only a 3-year student. She doesn't have the red blue down yet, but she's working on it.
I think I might have made a boo-boo too on the next one. I might have to revise on my video. I thought I had gotten it right. Oops.
Oh.
All right. Well, all right. So this is the process of learning. So, Jim, any final thought before we go to a break here that you want to just add in? Because what's so fun about this?
We'll get to the point. We'll get to the point where you're also seeing the expansion or the decent,
Decentration, yes.
Thank you. The decentration. It doesn't show in that particular model as they're coming together to a point. They're going from a flat field to an oblated field, spherical. Perfect circle, and then they begin to radiate outward at the equator. That will show up too, and as we get deeper into the science. And it's a sequential thing, and one side is male and one side is female.
So we don't want to get too deep yet.
They're coming together, male and female, but the masculine within each is the dominant expression in the inwinding cycle, and the feminine within each is the dominant expression on the outwinding cycle.
And we'll get that as we continue our lessons here. So we're working through it. So Deb, we'll put a link there, but we are working on having some of these made in proper Russell colors so that it will help us all get better at this, because John was like a kid in the candy store when he saw this, because he's like, when you see these things on the page, it's hard to understand what it really is like with motion. So we have so much more to go. Know that your team is hard at work about making this as easy to understand, but it is time for that break. So we'll go ahead and enjoy your 3 minutes. We'll see you shortly. All right, everyone, if you'll find your way back. Find your way back. So we are going to place in the chat box where you can purchase these, but do know we're working on getting some copies that are Russell colors. But this was great fun, and as Karen and I have been very transparent with everybody as we learn. This is why we have a balance. We work hard to have a balanced panel here. Those with a great number of years of study, those of newer years of study. So we're learning as we go along. But
this is the JK show, Kimberly.
This is the what show, John?
JK, Jim and John, and Kim and Karen. Here we go. Balance.
Yes. And then we have James and then Ken, who I know is watching. So
yes.
What's interesting about this is that we actually all know this at a soul level. This is just awakening you. So as we go to page 443, I want to go down to the bottom there and talk about a couple of things, because I took the liberty of bringing in the diagram. So go back up, James. Go back up, right? Go up. Yeah, right there. All right. So John, help us here. I almost hesitate to bring in two new words, generation and gravitation, but I do think we need to mention it, because then I want to go to the bottom of page 443. So share what you think is important here with generation and gravitation.
Okay. This can be a little bit confusing here.
I know. Should we do it now or wait till later?
I think it would be okay, but I think we should read it, and then we can get Jim and Karen and myself and you to comment on it.
Okay.
All right. So generation builds living bodies by multiplying its pressures, while radiation disintegrates them by dividing its pressures. In your little example, when you did the little push-pull, that was a perfect example. Yep, the push-pull right there. That's it. That's exactly what we just did. This also constitutes one gravity-controlled life-death cycle. Yep, beautiful.
Okay.
And like we mentioned before, that can take place, a trillion times.
No, I know I need more of them so that it
Yeah.
just continues, and you can see I need more hands.
Yes, but that's the basic principle. So if we can get James to bring us back to that,
Okay.
to that paragraph. Thank you, James. This also constitutes one gravity-controlled life-death cycle. We again repeat in still other words of the same meaning. Gravitation builds vital bodies by compressing light into extended pairs of high pressures and devitalizes them by expanding them. This, likewise, is the life-death cycle which gravity fully controls. Now, what came to me as I was reading this, Kimberly, is just look like a piece of fruit, like a banana, for example.
Okay.
And you can see that when that thing is green and vibrant, and then it goes to a brilliant yellow. And then from that brilliant yellow, you start to see the brown spots taken over, then it becomes completely taken over. And the term rotten, what we call rotten, right? That fruit or that vegetable is rotting. That means it's decaying, it's dying. It's winding outward now. And that's why it stinks. That's why death stinks. It's such a unique, smell. All right. So, and that's all that's happening there.
7P wants to find out if I search an anti-aging, will I find the youth, an anti-gravity, will I find the youth secret?
Well, there is one, and it's called the right thinking. So if you have right thinking, balanced thinking, then you have that secret to life. But
Uh-oh.
All right, but let's continue with that, because there's something here and I want to be sure. So I'm going to read the bottom of 443, and I simply want you to refer to it, because we all understand these opposites, and they're trying to say, stop right there, James, go back up. No, go back up. We're at that list. So composing and decomposing is what John was just talking about. Condensation and evaporation, visibility and invisibility. So I took the liberty, scroll past the next image, because I wanted to remind you this is the same kind of thing. So keep going. This same kind of dual principle. Keep going. Notice it talks about growth and decay, sound and silence, debit and credit, heating and cooling, freezing and melting, hard and soft. So what I thought was so powerful about this section was, as we scroll down to the green highlighted sentence, it says this. It said all of these pairs of opposites manifest the gravity cycles of life and death, which are repeated forever in every creating body in the universe. Jim, you have a thought?
Well, forever is the key for me there. It's an eternal sequence that didn't begin It doesn't end. It just is, because creator didn't begin or doesn't end. Creator just is. So mind manifesting eternally the idea of creation.
Okay, so I wanted to bring something up here. So you all don't know this about me. You know that I teach systems thinking, but you don't know that I'm actually certified in polarity management. And so, James, if you bring that up, what's interesting is they talk about this issue of polarity and I wanted to bring this up because the world is not very good at polarities. We like to declare things either right or wrong. So this is the answer, capital T, capital H, capital E. And I do a lot with leadership and helping them see both polarities, that both are needed. And what's interesting is that both are needed. And what we're doing is literally, but long before I ever ran into the Russell work, I would talk about how even in corporations, you have one belief and then you have the next belief and then you have this belief. And so change is always happening within organizations. What we can do when we understand polarity at the levels like this is we lessen the swing so it's not quite so extreme. This is why what happens to all of us, and whether it's politics or whether it's our organizations, is that we keep going from one to the other because we're declaring that one side is better than the other. So what you would say with most people is they would think that life is better than death. Although once you understand the Russell work, death is a part of the life-death cycle. Jim?
Yes, and we're talking about bodies here. The soul that you are doesn't end.
Right.
It's eternal.
Right.
Your body, I keep hearing people express, it's so common nowadays where they want to download your brain intellect, your brain memories into a artificial body so that you can live forever. You already live forever. And believe me, whatever they download your knowledge into, your brain acquired knowledge into, is nothing but an automation, like a record is the automation of a singer's voice. It's not you. You move out, in and out of bodies, and thank God for that. I could not imagine looking at the same face and the same body at the same sex, eternal.
Me either, Jim.
You know, Jim, I was thinking the exact same thing. Is my God, I wouldn't want to look at that face for 500
Exactly.
years.
So the point here is that the gift of re-giving or refolding to come back in a renewed body, be it male or female, is the continuation of the potential beauty of things.
So, all right. So let's keep continuing with that, Jim, because over there on the top of page 445, it says this, and this is in all caps, John. I'm going to ask you to read this because obviously Walter and Leo were trying to holler at us saying, this is important.
All right. So let's take our time with this. All right. And I'll give that lead in sentence. Polarizing bodies are increasingly living. Depolarizing bodies are gradually dying. Now, living bodies are those which are beginning the first half of their gravity pressure journey from the zero of rest of their birth to the zero of rest, which marks their maturity. Dying bodies are those which are beginning the second half of their journey from their gravity pressure maximum at maturity to the zero of rest from which they began their cycles. Now, that's a lot of words, but it's very basic. And remember, that's all we're talking about here is an inward compression, polarizing to maturity, right? And then an outwinding, decomposing back to zero. And then that cycle just simply repeats itself forever and ever. And then there's a time sequence, like, for example, a tree. You know, we'll say, you know, when you count the rings of a tree, well, if you cut a mature tree down and you'll see the rings, right? You count them. But if you count cut a tree down that is on the outward journey, a tree dies from inside out. So when you see a tree hollowed out in the center, then the death cycle is on its way, and it'll eventually hollow out, fall to the ground, and then it'll end up decomposing completely. So that's an example of that sequence, but I'm giving you like maybe 100-year or maybe a 150-year timeline for that one sequence of building a body, a tree body, and then that tree body decomposing back to zero.
So let me go down a little bit here on page 445 because we have about 6 more pages. I want to be sure to get to these images because they're very, very powerful. It says all matter appears into invisibility. Oh, go up a little bit, 445 there, James. Okay, right there. All matter appears into visibility from the invisible source and disappears from visibility into the invisibility in sequences of like death. There is no death, however. A man is increasingly living until his maturity. After that, he is decreasingly living until he finds rest in the earth from which he will be reborn. Rest is not death. Rest is the source of life. It is the seed from which life springs. All dying bodies which seek rest do so to become revitalized as life. Vitality and life are one. So I'm going to offer something to us all here. I want to encourage some of you. You all going to laugh, but I want to encourage you between now and next Sunday to please go listen to the song by Barry Manilow, I Write the Songs. If you will, go listen to that song and read the words. You're going to understand this at a whole new level. I promise you. It has been the most interesting thing that was shown to me when we were actually doing this. And so as we go down to this next paragraph, a raindrop is increasingly living as it falls to earth to express 1/2 of the gravity cycle. And it is decreasingly living as it rises again into the heavens for rest in its own pressure equilibrium. But it's not dead. The heavens reborn it again as a raindrop, as the earth reborns man as man. Cycles have no beginnings or endings. Cycles are waves, and waves do not begin or end. They repeat, but their repetitions have no end. Can we just pause at the poetry of that for a moment?
Beautiful.
Yes.
So I was just at a funeral yesterday, and for many that have no understanding of the fact that death really isn't the end, for me, I saw it as him coming to a closing of this life cycle. And when I read this, it resonated with my soul in such a powerful way that when you look at that ocean, all of a sudden, when you come back with us next week and you do that ocean meditation at the beginning, part of why I chose that was because of this issue that it's waves. Where does the wave begin and where does it end? It doesn't.
Yes.
It just changes states. And that's something Walter Russell talked about. Water just changes states, liquid solids to gases. And that's all what we're doing is we're just recycling through a recycling system.
Absolutely. So as we scroll down to the next page, 446, please understand just how poetic and how beautiful this idea of creation. It says, this knowledge is your power when your soul knows it. So do not let these words be just photographically impressed upon your brain. Meditate upon them in communion with your mind, which is God's mind, until you know them instead of just remembering them. Whew. Some near day, you will realize that the universe is just an idea of God's mind and yours. So as we're going into this next section, because then I want to just open it up for conversation, because I wanted to show everyone these next pictures. It was very powerful. So if we'll go down to 447, and the yellow highlighted sentence is this. It says, the universe is founded to manifest the idea of giving and re-giving equally. Jim, you all talked about that earlier already. Mm-hmm. Okay. It says natural law demands that her inexorable principle of balance interchange be obeyed by man and all effects of motion and nature. That's what the matter is with this very unbalanced world of today. Its critical illness is of its own making. And its cure is in man's hands when he decides to balance all of his institutions and individual practices and interchanging. So can we pause for a moment? And I want to ask the panel to simply express to everyone that that's really part of why we're doing this. We have the ability, one individual at a time, to begin to balance that which is unbalanced. John, let's hear from you, and then Jim, and then Karen.
Well, I don't want to, I want to take the politics out of my next statement, but I think it's a great example. You know, if you take America, we had 1/2 of America was going one direction, or not even half of it, but another half was going in another direction. Okay. But that one direction was too extreme for America. Right. And so it took place for several years. And then a majority of America said, whoa, wait a minute. This is unbalanced. This is not what life is meant to be. You know, the struggles and the division and the hatred and so on and so forth. And on Tuesday, America said, we want what is good and what is wholesome and what is good for all. And so that
According
is
to some people, John. So I want to be really honoring according to some
Right.
people. So this is the division that we're talking about. And you're saying it's important to come back to center.
Right. Yeah, I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying, but those are the two forces that were in play. And so that cosmic seesaw was fulfilling, nature was fulfilling her destiny. And it just happened to be through a voting process is the example that I'm using.
But it happens in organizations, it happens in families, it happens in communities. So that's the point you're making. And that's what I was talking about. The pendulum swings to extremes no matter where it is, whether it's in a company, it's in a community or a country.
Yes. So think of a hurricane, right? So a hurricane is a result of unbalanced atmospheric conditions. And that's why man can do a lot of things, but the one thing that he can't do is mess with nature. And once she decides to react, you got to hold on, and then it disappears and life's good. Right? The calm before and the calm after the storm.
John, that makes me think of the weather engineering that they're doing right now. And it's we normally have this cycle that happens on Earth, which is a rhythmic cycle. And when they're doing all of their weather warfare and the things they're doing, you see the things happening, the floods in China, what they did in Saudi Arabia, what they did in Tennessee, what they've done all over the planet is the repercussions of people thinking that they can play God with the weather, when there are certain rhythms and cycles, and it will dump one place and not on the other, and it is playing havoc. And there's lessons in it right now, and it's just heart-wrenching.
It is.
And remember, Mother Nature will always have the last word, though.
Well, it is, but it ain't been kind.
Well, so I want to take us down to the bottom of page 447. So I want to go to that last paragraph there, because as I show the rest of the pictures in this lesson, there were some huge ahas today. So go scroll up a little bit. Right there, James. Last paragraph. Go up. There is much disaster in the heavens and earth caused by unequal interchange, as there is in man's bodies. Communities of bodies and nations of bodies. Wars, bankruptcies, stomach ulcers, divorces, and every so-called ill of man have exactly the same basic cause that the cataclysm shows in figure 15 and 18, which we'll show you in just a minute, has when nature's actions and reactions are unbalanced. Likewise, every peaceful, smooth running effect in home life, business, or other affairs of man reflects its cause just as the effects you see in figure 14, 16, and 17. Okay, so here's go. So go on to this next. There's some really important things here. So let's just show all on the screen at one time, James. Page 448. I want to bring something up to you about this. So when you look at that, I want to read everybody what's at the bottom. What you're looking at right now is a balanced condition in the heavens. So may we all admire how magnificent that is for just a moment.
That's a beautiful galaxy.
I mean, beautiful. Now, here's what's intriguing, though. Okay, so you scroll down to the next image, which they were referring to, and that next image, figure 15 right there, is an unbalanced condition in the heavens. Now, what's very fascinating about this, okay, is that what Jim was saying, I mean, John was saying there with the yellow highlight, it says all such interchanging which creates the universe are either balanced and orderly or unbalanced and cataclysmic. Okay. Now, interesting about this, look to the next page. Next page there, figure 16 and figure 17 are both examples of balance. Okay. But look at this next image. Here's what was incredibly eye-opening for me today. So when they refer to figure 18 on the next page, their subtitle of this, and I'm curious, go ahead and scroll down, James, that next one. Here's the subtitle. It says, "This exploding nova is a majestic example of unbalance." I'm curious. if Cobb, you both comment on that. It is a majestic example of unbalance. So all this time that I've been studying it, I was tending to think of unbalanced as not good because in my human self, I want to put things polarized. But when they describe it as a majestic example of unbalance, it made me rethink it. John and then Karen.
Well, think of you experiencing food poisoning. And that's what you're witnessing. That's what you're seeing right there. That poisoned food is exploding in your body. And your body will do everything within its power to eliminate that that situation, that unbalance that you've ingested into your body. I'm just trying to give you an
That's
everyday
not majestic, John, but I hear you.
Well, it can be majestic when it's all done, I can tell you.
Really?
All right. So Karen, what were you going to say? And then I'm going to go to Jim.
In every sort of chemical reaction, there's a positive and negative. There's always chaos to order. And so when I look at that ball, it's full of electricity, it's full of charge, and it's making, it's reordering itself. So that's what I see. So when you look at the cosmos, even when you see cell divisions and stuff, you will see the electricity and the charge in it. So when you look at it, it's going from what you guys talk about, balance, to imbalance. And it's looking to find its balance in its charge. That's what I see. And in its beauty, the colors and the explosion and the dynamics and the energy and the mood and the color, the whole thing is like, rah!
Well, and so before I go to Jim, Rita makes a very good comment. She says that maybe also not understanding this process and having the patience, this comes from Rita, maybe also not understanding this process and having the patience to just allow it to balance out, which it will. So Rita, there's a profound wisdom in that. Jim, would you comment on that, please?
I agree with Rita, and that's exactly what we're doing. It has been allowed to work its way out. It's happening right now. And the end result is, as the system that is unbalanced begins to explode from within, a new system of balance will replace it. Mm-hmm. So when you look around the world and you see what seems to be explosive chaos, that's the proverbial phoenix rising, is also happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. We're seeing this by the multitude of souls that are now on planet that want to stop this destructive thinking and action. And they're beginning to outweigh the destroyers, the explosive mentalities. The explosive mentalities are learning a lesson. The incoming balancing and loving mentalities are showing them how to achieve what they want without the negation or the explosive side of it. The Russells use it later on in the course when they talk about sodium chloride, salt, as a balance relationship, and nitro and glycerin as an explosive relationship. That nebulae that is self-destructing is universally doing exactly what it's supposed to do under those pressures and circumstances, negating itself.
Okay.
And what will happen is you will end up with a dark black hole there that will take all that explosive light and matter and begin to draw it back in, reconcentrate it in a balance union. You'll see those light, the four rivers of light that the Russells talked about, the two black inwinding and the two white light outwinding rivers of light. Okay. It's always fascinated me on this one point. Let me say it real quick. I remember when I was a child in church reading Genesis, they talked about four rivers, two running in to Eden and two running out. So that shows that the Illuminate who wrote that little story for the then primitive mankind understood universal law. It's in there. Yeah. So we are learning now, we're experiencing universal law in action. The way to make this happen is don't focus on the destruction.
Okay.
Focus on the love that will rebuild this.
So in effect, destruction and creation happen in the same moments, is what you're saying. And it's a matter of where we focus. So I even met with Jim and John the other day because I was telling them that I actually understood what was happening in society using this example, that this was actually what is happening in our society right now, is that if we actually have this spiral coming in and that's what's being birthed. And the reason it sounds so loud is because we're in the middle of this and we hear many, many people that are referring to a split, to a change. What's happening is the end of a cycle and the new one's being birthed.
If I could mention one thing though, I want to add this to Jim's comment. So whether it's implosion or explosion, both are equal and equally important, because without the one, there cannot be the other, right? So we have to keep that in mind, because there's not a one-way universe. It's a two-way universe.
So as I was understanding this science a little bit more for this time, and I was thinking about the fact that we have those that are kind of going through that destruction, and we have the ascending universe, the ascending people who are trying to say, let's do love and light. Actually, if we really understand this from a scientific perspective, both sides are needed in order for something new to be created.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
So while we're upset that some people are maybe doing the destruction or not understanding the whole process, perhaps their job is to do the destruction, because the destruction is in fact serving the beautiful golden age and creation that is coming forth.
Yes, nothing is broken here. It's evolving.
Wow. Karen?
I'm going to say revealing and bringing things to light, and especially in the middle. And and I also think there can be a point where it doesn't have to be as dramatic. It can be where it's more balanced, and the more uneven, the more topsy-turvy or bottom, the more it's...
What happens is that it ends up going, instead of just going through the process when we have it so extreme, it takes a long time. I mean, so we're pushing and we're creating a force with each other is what's part of what's taking this so long. And many of us are like, would you please get on with it so we can live the golden age? So everybody stop putting in that resistance, because this is what so many of us are here to say. We're ready. Please stop resisting it. Understand that this is important. And so, Jim, before you jump in, I think it's important that we end, and I'll come back to you on the bottom of page 451, because this is why we're doing this. Okay, so below that image on 451, it says this. We'll pull it up here. That is why you require knowledge. Okay, James is pulling it up. Therefore, ignorance alone makes life hard. So make that right there, James. Go back up. It's right below the picture. So we're going to make that bigger right there. That is why you require knowledge. For ignorance alone makes life hard. The ignorant primate lived in fear and labored hard all his life to merely exist. The more you increase your God awareness, the more you comprehend God's ways and processes so as to make them your ways and processes, the more powerful you'll become in relation to your command over your own life and your environment. So maybe just pause there as we are wrapping up and getting ready to enjoy the visual journey, because to me, that's why we're doing this. Is it not, my fellow panelists?
Yep.
We're doing this so that people can become more powerful in understanding their role in this universe.
I think that was the most frequently used word in my family growing up. You're ignorant. You're ignorant, Johnny. You're ignorant, Danny. That's all my parents used to say to us kids. You're ignorant. But we got out of it.
Deborah brings up a very interesting point. She said, yesterday I heard someone say that wars will last until we stop judging and resisting them as bad. That's fascinating. I had not thought of it that way. And Deb says this, G says this, such a healing conversation. We need to hear this. Thank you. So, wow. Very interesting where this took us today. Any final thought, Jim, before we go to our visual journey?
Yes, please let us all work in our meditations and our prayers to understand that within the explosive side of what's going on this planet, as the love nature pours in, there are people on what we would consider the explosive side waking up by the tens of thousands and saying, wait a minute, this doesn't look like a good idea. They're crossing over to the loving and more supportive side. And that's how transition takes place. That's how we learn, by experiencing a negation and correcting it with love and balance. So
we're mostly out of balance at the moment, and the way we can bring it into balance is to be able to bring more love.
The world is out of balance in general in its interactions, but the world is waking up to what balance is and beginning to look in that direction, even within what we would call the dark side.
Okay, so Karen, any caveats you want to say before we go into our visual journey here?
Nope, I'm good. I want to reflect back on one thing that I really loved that Jim said. It was giving your body back to the creator. when you're decentrating. So I thought to myself, that one really stuck with me, and I wrote that down. So even when I do this, there's a few points you guys have pointed out that I'd love to put back into this, and I will. So the next week, so when it posts up, but just some beautiful thoughts. So thank you for your wisdom.
Love that. Facebook user, they don't have a name, but it says, some of this has made sense to me today. Thank you. What is going to happen for us all is the more you listen, the more your light's going to open up more and more, and you're going to understand you are actually climbing the spirals of consciousness yourself. Because to be honest with you, while luckily I have 2 of these, but while we each are individually going through our own journey, collectively all of this is happening. And the more you are doing your own personal journey of this, the more your light's being turned on to your greater awareness. So may we simply sit back and enjoy the beautiful gift of love that Karen has re-given to us. gracious thank you. A gracious thank you to Karen. So, John, you're on mute. If you'll come off mute, that happens right after we end up going to these things. You have a thought, John?
Yes, that was absolutely beautiful as usual. Thank you, Karen.
I know I got to switch the blues and the reds on a few.
Well, no, wait.
I
I only wrote down one thing that you had wrong.
Okay.
When you showed that battery, you had the battery as two negatives. It's two positives.
Two positives.
Okay.
But all right, so why don't you explain that story, John? That's a very good point, because that is something that was shared within the Walter and Leo Russell work. So why is it not a positive and negative as we've all been trained?
You want me to tell that story quickly?
I do, yes.
All right. Well, supposedly Walter Russell was giving a lecture to the science community, and Leo happened to be on stage with him. And he was going into detail about positive and negative electricity. So anyway, as the presentation was going on, Leo kind of interrupted Doctor, and she said, "Doctor, look at me." She goes, "Am I negative?" And he said, "No, darling, you're not." So she said, "Well, stop using the term," because he was using the term negative for female. You see?
Wow.
So anyway, so I'm just saying. So here you have the lady, if you will, the woman, correcting the consummate scientist that, hey. But in Doc's defense, if I may, he was talking to the science community that only understood positive and negative. They
sure.
didn't know that. But I thought it was beautiful that Leo had to say, "Listen."
Well, if you think about it, though, and what some people call this matrix that we live in, that is part of the programming, is to associate those kind of negative things with the feminine. And part of what is being rebirthed, in my personal opinion, during this time is understanding that there's a powerful balance of both. So I'm going to ask James to put a link there in the chat box, because I did a presentation in August about cosmic romance, and I talked about Walter and Leo's story. I also was very transparent in sharing how Ken and I met, and I will do another session follow-up later, because truly what I'm learning with this experience with Ken is that love really is about balance. And that issue of balance, it was something that we have not taught anybody really about, the power of relationships. And to me, that just was a very powerful thing. So I do want to place that in the chat box. That was a very transparent and heartfelt experience that it will continue to grow on to. So do we have any questions? That's what we just paused here. We won't make it go longer than it needs to, but are there any questions? So Bonnie, Karen says, by the way, of your video, Karen, she says, "Stunning and clear, Karen." So do know that we post these visual journeys on our YouTube channel so that you can access them. And Bonnie says this, this is funny, Bonnie, because has a lot of truth. She says this, she says, "I'm thinking that I'm going to," hold on, I'm waiting for the comment to come up. She says, "I'm thinking that I'm going to see," hold on, I'm waiting for it to come up. James is working on it. "I'm thinking I'm going to see sex going on all around me from now on. Sure glad I'm done with that particular portion of my life."
Oh, Bonnie, it never stops, really, completely.
Oh, God.
It might slow down, but.
That is so funny. I am absolutely loving that. So we're going to place those links. The video will be on the Facebook page, as well as the regular link on the USP on the USP channel as well. So any other questions or comments from our panel as we're waiting for any other questions?
All of us keep in mind that every interaction between any two bodies or embodiments is a sexual interaction. It doesn't have to be physically intimate. It's a sexual interchange.
Does that mean you're charged or you're not charged by it?
Well, no, you can be equal to your friends and close relatives are people that you tend to be more equally charged with.
Okay.
And you get along well. The ones that you have difficulty being around are the ones that you're not equally charged to. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It means that you're not equally charged.
Yeah.
So and that's why the Russells tell you not to go into areas or situations and stay there where your energy is being drained by the energy of those things or the situation around you. Remove yourself from it. If you can't remove yourself from it, meditate.
I had one other comment. I'm feeling a bit like a banana. I'm starting to get brown spots, and it made me think think of what John was talking about.
Well, I'm having difficulty visualizing what's next. Karen.
It's like making me laugh. It's like, okay, yeah, that's about right. It's 69.
Yeah, there you go.
So which, by the way, just for the record, I want to go back to what John said in jest, but I actually believe this. I have been given intuitive guidance that we actually have the ability to recharge our body. And so I have spent the past 2 years working on reversing that and bringing that light in to reverse that process. And I actually believe with what's happening in the world right now that we are going to be able to do that. So I believe it's a unique situation. Time will tell. You all can just laugh at me later. But I am working on recharging the cycle to go back. So let's see.
I'm gonna hold you to it.
Listen, you never know. I believe that we're living in miraculous times. I believe that we are living in a time that humanity has never seen. And we all know that this ascension of humanity is about bringing back an entirely new era where we're going to have our physicality with this this all knowledge. So I'm going to lay the gauntlet down here, dear ones, because I don't think that we know what things are going to end up.
The Aquarian age that we're moving into is expansive, and our lifetimes will go further. We'll live to be 120, 150 years old as we move into that era, maybe older. It's an expansive cycle. We're coming out of a compressive cycle, which was water and murky. The murkiness will disappear. Our intercommunication and our soul communication will increase. And as a result, tensions are released and lifetimes expand.
Well, and that's actually what I talk about in the video where I share what happened to Ken and I, because I share about telepathy. Some people call it telepathy but you're talking about, Jim, it's just simply that soul understanding and that connection. So we are moving into an era where we're going to have access to gifts that we've never had here in this physical plane. And I'm all for it. So let's just see. Karen, I'll let you know if I turn back the clock 20 years, you might notice by the end of our time.
If
So
not, I'll let you know what happens over here.
We're at the you let me know if your bananas are just continuing to turn.
Like, that's a new expression for me.
All right.
Oh.
John, I know you have a comment coming any moment now. I can feel it bubbling up, but I'm almost scared to give you the space. So there you go. We'll see where we're going here. Everyone have a wonderful time. Please come back to the session next week and ask comments. Bring your comments, ask questions. Feel free to post on our Facebook page any other questions or comments you have. We will be continuing here with lessons with Unit 6. So we'll be going into that next lesson, which means by the end of November, dear ones that have been with us this whole time, we would now be halfway through the home study course. May we all just pat ourselves on the back and celebrate. Okay, celebrate that, because that is a big deal. Karen, I didn't see you. That is a big deal.
No, your back, not your chest. Your back.
Back, Karen.
Look at your back.
I guess you could go like that. I don't know. It might be a
Hey,
little
listen, it's
painful,
the
but-
banana monkey and me.
Everyone have a wonderful week. Please remember to stay focused on the things that are uplifting and powerful. We're all about turning the lights on. Let not the world to remove your light. We have a world to balance that we each can do, one individual, one thought, one day, and one moment at a time. So much love to you all. Until next time.